Rambam Hilchos Chanukah. So we'll start again from Halacha Gimel. Bneza, for the reasons above, about we talk about the oppression and how we overthrew the oppression, and also the Nes Pach Hashem, and it also these 8 days that begin on Chav Kislev, Yemei Simcha v'Halel. They are days of Simcha and Halel. Right? So your Medaik can say Simcha Mashman if there is an Indian of like having if there are even if Su'uda is not a chayva. If Chanami of having a cup of wine and a good shtick flesh, al Simcha Chanukah seems to be in, but Yemei Simcha v'Halel, days of Simcha and Halel. And we light candles on these days, which are Yemei Simcha. See what is it? It's days of Simcha and Halal. And on these days of Simcha and Halal, we light the candles on the openings of the houses, and every night, of these 8 nights, to display the miracle. These days are called Chanukah. These days of Simcha and Halal, in which we also light the candles, are called Chanukah. Then Asur B'Haspatarski, important, also Haspatarski, just like the also important. And lighting the candles then is a mitzvah b'draban, just like Kriyas HaMegillah. So, presumably says compared to Kriyas HaMegillah and like just like they're also Asur B'Haspatarski, because really Hilchos Chanukah v'Purim are all one. Hilchos Chanukah is Perek Gimel of Hilchos Chanukah and Hilchos Megillah v'Chanukah. Hilchos Megillah v'Chanukah. Okay. Okay. So what we were talking about yesterday is that these are called days of Halal, and we're gonna have more on this later, but it's already ra'ui to get into the major discussion that we're going to see that the Rambam is going to spend, after the Halacha Dad, the rest of the parak is all going to be about Hilchos Halal. They saved Hilchos Halal all the way for Hilchos Chanukah, right? You would have thought that Halal belongs in Sefer Ava together with Hilchos Tefillah, right? That's what you would have thought. Just like Musaf is in Hilchos Tefillah, and Ne'ilah of Yom Kippur and Hilchos Tefillah, why not Halal? And so we have the fundamental question of why it's not even in Sefer Ava at all, with the other laws of how you daven, serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu, with Tefillah, right? And brachas. Okay, it's number one. But number two is why he dafka put Hilchos Halal, as we're going to learn, in Hilchos Chanukah. In Hilchos Chanukah, when Halal does come up earlier, right? It comes up earlier twice. Yesterday we just mentioned Hilchos Chametz U'Matzah, because you have to say Halal during the Seder, right? So it comes up over there. It's part of the Seder, of which he discusses in Perek Zayin of Hilchos Chametz U'Matzah. So the din of Halal, it's part of the Seder, right? But even afterwards, but prior to Hilchos Chanukah, it comes up again in Hilchos Lulav, right? It's mentioned over there that there's the Na'anuim, if I remember correctly, right? We have the Na'anuim during Halal also, right? I do believe that's mentioned. So it comes up before, right? We have mention of Halal earlier, so you would have thought once he brings it up earlier, say the halachas of Halal there. He saved the whole thing for Hilchos Chanukah, right? So Halal's mentioned, but it's in by the other Yomim Tovim, right? Generally speaking, because it comes up, for Seder, for Na'an. I do believe that he mentions it as far as the Na'anuim, right? Right, but the detailed halachas of Halal, including which days was held, because it was mentioned. was mentioned in in Hilchos Chametz Matzah. It was mentioned in Hilchos Lulav, right? But which days we say Hallel? The 18 days Sheyachid Gomer is a Hallel, and 21 days in Chutz La'aretz. It's all going to be right here in Hilchos Chanukah. Like, why do you say it? You saved it here for Hilchos Chanukah. He didn't finish the discussion on Hallel when it had to be brought up earlier by necessity for Leil HaSeder and for the Na'anuim. Right? So let's break it down step by step. First and foremost, we see that Hallel is not a tefillah dikadin, because then it would have been in Hilchos Tefillah. It's not a Birkas HaShevach, and it's not a tefillah dikadin. Otherwise, it would have been in Sefer Ava, presumably in Hilchos Tefillah, maybe in Hilchos Brachos, where he has the brachos of Hoda'ah. All the different brachos you have to make, like thanking God for this, thanking God for that, right? It's not there. It's not there to the best of my memory. No, I mean, I don't even think it's even mentions what I mean to say. Dvarei Halachos of Hallel, definitely not there. It's not even a question. That the Halachos are saved here for Hilchos Chanukah. So we have a question why it's even in Sefer Zmanim to begin with, and if it's in Sefer Zmanim, why do you wait till the end of Sefer Zmanim to discuss it? Okay, so one thing is Vadai, right? It's Vadai off the bat, because as the Maggid Mishnah says, everyone says the name of Rav Chaim Volozher, and Rav Chaim Volozher says it, but the Maggid Mishnah already said it in his introduction to Hilchos Shabbos, where he first, I think it's when he first starts commenting. And Maggid says, the number one thing to be medayik from a Rambam is the seder of how he sets things up. So if it's not in Sefer Ava at all, so it's not a tefillah dikadin, it's not a bracha dikadin. Hallel is a bria b'fnei atzma. It's pure praise of God, pure praise. It's not like tefillah, where tefillah, we have elements of praise, but the essence of tefillah, or let's just say praise is one ingredient, I should say, of Poisem Bechvoda Shel Makom. You say some praise, but there's bakosha and there's hoda'ah. And I guess that's the number one thing to clear up. Hallel is not hoda'ah, right? Yemei simcha v'hallel. Hoda'ah is something else. Hoda'ah, so of course, hoda'ah is, the Indian of hoda'ah is, that's a tefillah dikadin. That's the Gimel Achronos. We have to thank God for whatever we have. I think the Rambam says it even in the beginning of Hilchos Tefillah, that everyone, kafi tzachos l'shano, would praise God, ask for what he needs, and also say thank you very much. And that's what all the brachas are. All the brachas are for an expression of thanksgiving for what we have. Right, Kosh came Birkas Hamazon, which is in Sefer Ava. Right, you give thanks, okay, and the Birchos Hodah and the Birchos Hagomel, all these things are in Sefer Ava, right, and that's part of call it our Chiyuv Tefillah, right, in general, meaning it has the Yesod Min HaTorah as part of what we should be davening for. Part of what we daven, part of our tefillah should be Hodah, right? It certainly has its Yesod in Birkas Hamazon, which is also in Sefer Ava. Right, thank you very much for the food. Right, and then there's it has Hodah has a Yesod Min HaTorah, and I'm just saying that Derech Agav is not vital to what I'm going on about Hallel, but it is Kenzan. I think it's an important point, because as the Rambam's going to double down in a minute, say Hallel is D'Rabbanan. Every type of Hallel is D'Rabbanan. He's going to say it very emphatically. Every type of Hallel is D'Rabbanan. And the Ramban, in his Hasagas to the Sefer HaMitzvahs, he decides to pick on the Rambam for what he writes here in his Hasaga to Shorish Rishon. Agav, Rambam saying that, the Chayev Midoraisa, to keep it D'Rabbanan. He picks on that Nakuda, but also he picks on how the Rambam, fought with the Bahag for counting Hallel. Hallel is one of the Taryag mitzvahs. It's only midrabban. So the Ramban says, aside from what he says over there in general, you could count the D'Rabbanan as one of the Taryag, A. But B is, why should Hallel be D'Rabbanan? Even if the Nusach is midrabbanan, right? How is that any different than Rambam, than what you say that, Birkas Hamazon is D'Oraisa, but the Nusach is midrabbanan? Or even more, you're the one who holds Tefillah is D'Oraisa, The Ramban disagrees. Now, you don't want to hold tefillah d'oraisa, and the nusach midrabanan. Why can't the yesod of halo be midoraisa? Why can't the yesod of halo be midoraisa? Just the Rabban gave the nusach. And I think that, no, according to the Rambam, that'll be the chumne is Kenzan Hoidah has a yesod min haTorah. It's part of, it's an element of tefillah. It's definitely alluded to in Birkas Hamazon. It is Birkas Hamazon. So it could be the yesod of Hodah is midai chaisa, right? To say thank you very much, and just the Rabbanan gave us the nusach, whether the yesod of Hodah is nichlal in the mitzvah of tefillah, and also nichlal in the idea of Birkas Hamazon, right? Which are both two chiyuvim d'oraisa according to the Rambam. So it's kenzan hoidah could be yesodai min haTorah, the rayon, the concept, and then the nusach is midrabanan, right? Halo, not that way. It's going to say the Rambam's going to double down. Halo's kulo matchalav atzof d'Rabbanan, which the Ramban can't understand. Why can't the halo, the sort of praising God, be min haTorah? And just the Rabbanan gave us the nusach. Like, why are you so angry at the Bahag? Maybe halo yesodo. The concept is midai chaisa. Just the nusach is midrabanan. Like you count Birkas Hamazon as a mitzvah, even though the nusach is midrabanan. You count tefillah as a mitzvah. Yulashitascha. The Ramban says to the Rambam that you hold tefillah is deraisa. Ramban does not. Right. You count it as a mitzvah, even though the whole nusach is midrabanan. Why can't it be the same out? But because no, halo is nishkin haidah. Halo is not a synonym with Hodah, that indeed what we do outside Hodah is in Sefer Ahava, whether it's in Hilchos Tefillah, whether it's in Hilchos Brachas, right? When we thank God, right? Hodah is a form of a service that, that we're commanded to serve Hashem with. Halo is not Hodah. They're not synonyms. It's a big mistake that people make. Right, we're in Rambam land. That halo is not hoidah. It's a bria b'fnei atzma. It's to praise God. It's just pure praise. It's not saying thank you. It's to just praise God, and it's not the praise that you have to give before making a bakosha, which is like part, I guess, the poischim b'chvara shel makom. That's poischim bar that kilo. It's a seif of tefillah. It's a davar b'fnei atzma, praising God, right? Just halo. It's its own davar that midoraisa, it seems from the Rambam, midoraisa, it has no shirish, right? So lomi ba, it's not a tefillah dikadin, because you're not asking for anything and you're not thanking. But this whole idea of praising God for what he does for you, it's praise, not thank you. Of course, thank you, Yechayev. You understand that? It's the most basic derech eretz, and there are things in the Torah that, that lay down this yesod of the idea of hoidah. Tefillah, Birkas Hamazon, two places where we find the yesod of hoidah min haTorah, and then then the Rabbanan gave us all the different brachas and all like Birkas Hagoma, they gave us the guidelines, the detailed guidelines and detailed nusach. Right, halo is nishkin hoidah, right, and halo is nishkin tefillah. It's a davar b'fnei atzmo of pure praise to God. Right? And that's why, as we're going to see, the Rambam holds the whole mitzias of halo's midrabanan, not just the nusach of halo, the whole mitzias of halo. As the Rambam's going to double down that in just a second, he's going to say that there is no such thing as when there's a chiyuv deiraisa of halo, no such thing. Right? So getting into the Rambam's head, I know the Ramban doesn't hold this way. I know that, but we're in Rambam land right now. All right, so we're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves, but everyone knows that in just 2 halachas time, the Rambam's going to double down. There's no such thing as hal deiraisa. It's la'olam midivrei seifrim, as we're about to learn. I can't hope that I'm jumping the gun. Halo's nishkin hoidah. It's a davar b'fnei atzmo. Okay. So now we know, right, that Chazal, were mataken. It seems that the takana started from the Nevi'im, that they should say halo on the Yom Tovim and on Geula from the Tzara. Okay, right. So now here's the amazing kunz, right? there's what I'd like to propose over here. All right, that the why the Rambam decided to put here Hilchos Hallel, because these are Yemei Hallel. Yomim Tovim are not Yemei Hallel. There are days that we say Hallel. As Ram's going to say, but that's a Sachos Kapinus Chazal, that there are 18 days a year that in Eretz Gomer Sahalo, and Chutz La'aretz it's 21 days. Shen Gomer and Yachid Gomer by Sahalo, right? But that doesn't mean that they're be'etzem Yemei Hallel, right? It's because they're Yom Tov. Well, let's say in the Yom Tovim, right? It's Yom Tov. Because it's Yom Tov, you say Hallel. So the Hallel is triggered by the fact that it's Yom Tov, right? So now, a theoretical Hakira, right? This is not something that's possible in physical reality, but it shouldn't be too hard to imagine either, even though it can never happen. Let's say there will be such a thing as Pesach without Kedushas Moed, right? So you have Leil Seder, and you're taka allowed to drive to Seder, not just the uncle that you just tell him just don't come and he drives in for it. No, and you don't want him there anyway, not just only because you don't want to be machshalin, and you really don't want him at your Seder table anyway, right? So let's say there will be such a theoretical world that that we can have Pesach without Kedushas Moed. Without Kedushas Moed, it's not Asur B'Melacha, right? So if it wouldn't be a Yom Tov, so what halachas would be missing? So it's Chag HaMatzos, as it were, right? You have to eat matzah, you have to do Sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim, right? So it's a theoretical Hakira, right? Let's say you could imagine stripping away from Chag HaPesach all the dinim of Yom Tov, right? Take away the dinim of Yom Tov, right? So Korban Pesach there would be. Why? It's not so, you don't need Kedushas Moed. You need the date, right? So that's why someone in the crowd might be saying, I'll give you a scenario. We lose the Luach, like the Rambam L'Shitaso, that if the Chas V'Shalom, he says it'll never happen anyway. But so still theoretical. We lose the Yishuv in Eretz Yisrael, so then the Luach that we have is worthless, but Hashem promised it'll never happen. Ki lo yitosh Hashem amo, right? There'll always be a Yishuv in Eretz Yisrael. Okay, so, but that doesn't help. That would not, because then there would be no such thing as the 15th of Nisan or the 14th of Nisan either. There'll be no such thing as halachic dates. I was wondering about this last night. No such as halachic dates. How would we write a get? How would we write a ksuva? How would we do shtoros? How would you have edus? Because you need zman. It has to be edus shatei chol azima. Very interesting question. Maybe for civil matters and for Eidos, using the calendar of the Goyim would be good enough to make it Eidos Shatei Chol Hazima. Say, how do you say it? Imano Yisem Bo So Yom, right? It has to be Eidos Shatei Chol Hazima to be kosher Eidos. A star needs Zman to be a kosher star. How would that work if we don't have the Luach? We're going to Medaf Zogin, right? It's the stomach, we could say that maybe for Shtaros and Eidos, we could use the calendar of the Goyim. No, tzorchian, right? But anyway, if we wouldn't have the Luach, we wouldn't have any such thing as the 14th of Nisan or 15th of Nisan. So you wouldn't have any of the mitzvahs, not Korban Pesach, not matzah, not anything. Okay. Well, let's say, so again, this will never happen and can never happen. And this is just for illustrative purposes, right? If we could take away, all the dinim of Moyed, of Yom Tov, from Pesach as an example. We read about there's no Isser Malacha, right? There should not be a din of Simchas Yom Tov because it's din in Yom Tov, right? There's no Simchas Yom Tov because Simchas Yom Tov is because it's Yom Tov, right? So we take so there'll be no Simcha, there'll be no Isser Malacha. No reason if you still have the dates, there still should be Korban Pesach, still should be Matzah if it's still indeed your Daled and Tesvav of Nisan. Right? If it's indeed your Dal and Tesvav of Nisan, right? So here's something interesting. As I'm talking, I'm realizing I should have taken Sukkos instead, right? But what I'm realizing is that, lav davka. What I'm realizing as I'm thinking out loud, this is the way we used to learn. Me and Rosh Yeshiva used to learn, and when Rosh Yeshiva gave Ram Chabur, is how he did it. It was all off the cuff to teach you how to read and how to think. Of course, to make a final psak, you have to do legwork and double check and match against sources. But we're not doing that right now. We're just having a Chavrusa in the Rambam. All right. And okay, so if you would strip away the all the dinim of Yom Tov from Pesach and Sukkot respectively, the dinim of Yom Tov, so of course lulav you'd have, Sukkot you'd have, right? Korban Pesach you'd have, matzah you'd have. You just wouldn't have Isser Malacha, right? You wouldn't have a din of Simchas Yom Tov, so you wouldn't have to eat and drink. Okay, I would say also you wouldn't have Halo. You wouldn't have Halo Bayom. I should stress that Halo of Shachris. You won't have the Halo of Shachris. You would not have the regular Halo of Shachris out the Yom Tov Dikadin, right? Because Halo is because it's a moed. That's the lusha of the Gemara. So I'll call Perek for Perek. Perek is Yom Tovim, right? So it's Yom Tov that you say Halo. So it's not that it's a day of Halo. It's because it's a Yom Tov. And because it's a Yom Tov, you say Halo. If you could take away Kedusha Yom Tov, there wouldn't be Halo either. So the Halo is in response to the fact that it's a Yom Tov. So, like as I think some of the Rishonim point out, I think there's a Briscoe Rav on this. There are those that say that even though it says over there that they'll say Halo Kishinigam is a Gulasan, that's just on that year. On the first year, the Takanas Nevi'im was Takanas Nevi'im. So it's very meduik with what the Lashon of Rambam says over here. The Takanas Nevi'im was, you would say Halo in response to the nace of being Nigal. And that whole thing is, like we said, is invented by the Nevi'im. It has no shorish min ha-Torah. Okay, so but that would just be, at the time of the Nes, right? There's no reason why you would say Halo another year, a year later, right? And that's why just because you had a Nes 1 year doesn't mean you say Halo every year ever since. That needs a Takanas D'Rabbanan. That should be a permanent institution. That's the Shona Acheres, Kavim Vasum, Bahalo, Bahuda. Huda not being a synonym for Halo, as we're saying, as we're being medayik from the Rambam. Okay, so the Halo there is responsive. It's in response to the Nes. It's in response to the fact that it's Yom Tov, right? Right. So it's a responsive Halo. Days of response. Now it happens to be that Yom Tov comes once a year. Okay, so it's going to be repetitive. You're going to have that thing that triggers Halo, but it's not Yemei Halo. It's triggered by the fact that it's a Yom Tov and by the original first time that you were nigal from the tzara. There's a chi of Halo midivrei neviim, not from the Torah. Halo, not Hoda. Halo midivrei neviim, but it was kishar nigal and almost gulasa. Dafka then, but pashtus, right? That should ever be afterwards. For a nace that happened, that's a takana d'Rabbanan, right? So now, as I'm talking, and I hope I'm not confusing the crowd, is Ken Zan, right, to answer a question of the Ramban, right? The Ramban brings a chazal that he thinks is like touche. There's the Ramban, like I said, in Hasagas on the Sefer HaMitzvahs, that a touche, I proved that Halo is ever since Matan Torah. He found the Lashon Chazal, I forget which matter is a Rabbi Yossi, when it says, V'chi Yisrael shechnes pischayim, v'nolim v'em v'lo omrim halo. Am Yisrael, Am Yisrael, could it be that they shechted their pesachim, and did their netilas luv and didn't say halo? Can't be, right? Right, so that proves that halo is ancient. It could still, I think the Ramban's Moedi understands that it could be more, it might be a Takanas Moshe. You could say that, but he doesn't say why you have to say that. But it's ancient, at least, right? Ancient, right? The Ramban's only open the idea that Halo is a Takana D'Rabbanan, because how could be Minat Torah if the Torah never sanctioned Halo. It's only Merumas, but not sanctioned, right? So by here, Dafka over here is the one time he's made it to the Rambam that Halo is Kulo D'Rabbanan because the whole Chag is Midrabbanan, right? Pashtus, right? But we could say about the Ramban also that that over there the Halo is responsive. So and that's why I emphasized before. If you take away Kedushas Moed from Pesach and Sukkot, which you can't. Which you can't. Have I said that enough? It's all theoretical. If you would strip Kedushas Moed away from Pesach and Sukkot, right? So you would still have, matzah, korban Pesach, and of course tomorrow, which is Nichlal in the korban Pesach mitzvah Neatzma, right? And you would have Sipur Yitzias Mitzrayim. Is Ken Zayin, you could have Halo as a function of your Chi of Sipur Yitzias Mitzrayim, but out Chi of Halo, because out Sipur Yitzias Mitzrayim, right? So it won't really be a Chi of Halo. It'll be a Chi of it's part of your Sipur Yitzias Mitzrayim because part of the Oseder, right? But it's not out Halo. And the same thing by Lulav, So there's a mention that Lashon Chazal from the Rambam, from the Ramban, that he's Masad and Ram, is Ken Zayin that there might be a difference if we take away Kedusha Samoyed from Sukkot. Is Ken Zayin there's a difference between a Jew who has a Lulav and a Jew who does not have a Lulav, right? So the Jew who doesn't have a Lulav, there's no Chi of Halo because it's not Yom Tov, right? There's a Chi of Sukkah, right? But if you have lulav, so the lashon the Rambam and the Sefer on mitzvahs is that you have to take the lulav v'lismoach bo. So it comes like this: that the din halo is second. It's a response to the lulav because it's a din simcha by the lulav, right? So over there, it's not really a chi of halo, right? It's in response to the lulav, right? So I'm saying how it's possible to have the halo of Leil HaSeder and the halo of Natilas Lulav, even if you strip away Kedushas Moed, because the halo is coming as a nispach to the Leil HaSeder, the halachos of Leil HaSeder, and a nispach to the chiyuv of lismoach ayidei the lulav, like usmach to Hashem Shivas Yom. That's also Rambam Sefer Mitzvah lismoach bo. Right, and I said this in another shir that with these observations we can answer up how the Rambam would cope with that chazal the Rambam throws at him. Notliness luveim the shoftas vev lomrim halo. Yeah, they say halo, but not out tzchi of halo. Because out a nispach to the din of Sipur Yitzias Mitzrayim that you say to go to korban Pesach, right? Or a nispach of the simcha of lulav, not out tzchi of halo, right? Right, so I'll call upon him. What we're pointing out is that there's reactive halo. That that when Chazal or Mitaka you say halo in response to the fact that it's Yom Tov, or it's Ken Zayin in response to the fact that you're bringing a korban Pesach, or response to the fact that you're being Neitel Lulav. Right. Chanukah is not a Chag. It's not a Yom Tov. Not a Asur B'Melacha. It's not a Moed. Right. So it's Yemei Halo. That's the big amazing thing that holidays of Chanukah are be'etzem shaykh tal. They're days of Halo. Days of Halo. You're not saying Halo because it's a Yom Tov. You're not saying Halo because you're doing epis of mitzvah, that this will be a nispach of that mitzvah. They are Yemei Halo. And it is, they're mahus, they're Yemei Halo v'simcha. And that's the ikr of what Chanukah is, Yemei Halo v'simcha. And then, like, umadliki b'anas haneros, right? And we, right? And it's very interesting that that it is Ken Zayin, the din of Ner Chanukah, relative to Chanukah, is it's not like the din of matzah relative to the Chag of Pesach, that it's called Chag HaMatzos. So like he called all the halachos of Purim Hilchos Megillah. It's very interesting, right? But we are Hilchos Chanukah is mitzad the Halo. Right, sometimes there's a mitzvah of the Yom that's, keneged the mahusa the Yom, right? So Chag HaMatzos, even though the Kedushas Moed is, it's its own mitzvah saseh, Lishbos, on the 15th of Nisan, right? The mitzvah says its own, but it's like there's a mitzvah sayom that's somehow connected to the Mahus of the Yom, that are separated from the other Yom Tov. They make it miyuchad from the other Yom Tov. And here we're saying a big yesod, and Rosh Yeshiva, I remember him saying this, that this what makes Halo special. Halo has been Mahuso, different from all the other Chagim, that they're Yemei Halo. That the din of Halo is more kashur b'mahuto, to the Indian of Chanukah that would separate it from other Chagim, other events on the calendar. And that's Nifla Mode. Now, Rosh Yeshiva spoke this out once by a Mesibas Chanukah, and he wanted to tie, and I didn't understand it. And when I had a chance, oily, right, by the Avdin, right? I had a chance to be mefalpa with him on this, and I blew it because I wanted to. I just wanted to needle him. He said it's by a Chanukah Masiba, and then he was not in the mood to dance. So he sat at the table and just, banged on the table in the rhythm of, to the rhythm of how the Bachrim were dancing. He didn't feel like dancing. So I walked up to him and I asked him a question on his shmooze. Now the shmooze was, after he pointed out this Rambam, that you see that Halo b'mahuto is shaykh, Chanukah b'mahuto is shaykh to of Halo. Halo, Yemei Chanukah are Yemei Halo, right? And it seems that it's more, Chanukah is more about Halo than it is about Neros Chanukah. Neros Chanukah is equally a mitzvah, but the relationship of Chanukah is closer related to the Din Halo, in trying to touch up the Mahus Hayom than it is to Ner Chanukah. Now, as opposed to Megillah, let's say Purim, it's Chag Megillah. Hilchos Megillah is the halachas that include all halachas of Purim, like Hilchos Chametz Umatzah include all the halachas, the moedika halachas of Chag HaMatzos, of Pesach, even though matzah is just one mitzvah, but it's more connected to mahus of the Chag, right? With this again, to make sure that sometimes there's a mitzvah sayom, that this mitzvah sayom could help touch up how this day b'mahuto is different from the other Yom Tov, Chag HaSukkos. Chag HaSukkos. It's never called Chag HaLulav. It's very interesting. Isn't already something that yesh la'ayin, so going back to what the Rosh said, the Masiba, that the reason why he thinks Halo is be'etzim kosher to Chanukah, and Chanukah is be'etzim kosher to Halo, b'mahut, is because it's the Mesiras Nefesh. The Mesiras Nefesh of Am Yisrael, is what made it a Chag of Halo. And at the time, I really should have asked him to explain the Mahut of divorce, because the Mahut Hayom. But I really feel, looking back, I'm ashamed, because I really didn't care about the Mahut. I just thought I had a good kasha on him. I thought I had a good kasha, right? And I walked up to him and said, the Rosh says, that the Chanukah is the Chag of Mesiras Nefesh. And I think he went straight. They said that we, the Am, were kona the midah of Mesiras Nefesh for Torah. We were kind of that midah from Chanukah, right? Like the Chashmonaim in those days, we were kind of midah of being Meiser Nefesh for Torah. We were kind of that midah from Chanukah, and the story of Chanukah, and that's why, for reasons that I never understood, that's why it's b'mahut, Yemei Halo. That's what he said, and it hasn't been our Boim Shana yet. It's coming up to that, God. Anyway, so maybe by the time it reaches Arbaim Shana from that event, I'll figure out what he meant. But just at the time, I walked out, I thought I had a good kasha. So what do we know? Kind of the meat of Mesiras Nefesh from Chanukah, we got it earlier in history from Yitzchak Avinu by the Akedah. Yitzchak Avinu gave us the meat of Mesiras Nefesh. He was willing to obey Avram. He could have beat up Avram Avinu. Right, he was 37. Avinu was 137. He could have overpowered Avram Avinu and run away. Right, but he trusted Avram Avinu, and because Avram Avinu was Becheskas Navi, as Rosh said over and over, used to tell us over and over again, why Yitzchak Avinu will consent. Because he knew that was the emes of the halacha, because Avram Avinu was Becheskas Navi, and this was a Horas Shah, right? And okay, so I asked, why don't you say that we got the meat of Mesiras Nefesh? That's why we had the schus of Yitzchak. Schus of Akeres Yitzchak. Am Yisrael is willing to die and be a carbon for a Kadosh like Yitzchak Avinu. So he got the meat of Mesiras Nefesh, for Ratzon Hashem from Yitzchak. That's what I asked him, which I don't think is a bad kasha, even until this day. I'll just tell you what he said. This is the way he was mechanech us, at least mechanech me, because he wanted to make us think that there's a mistake in your question. Your reasoning is corrupt. There's a mistake in the question, right? It means not your question because there's as I say, think it over again. That's how he sent me away, which is the way to teach. If you think a kid is capable of rethinking and realizing why he's wrong by himself, then that's what you should send him to do. It's how you build a thinking person. We don't have people like that anymore. We don't have mechanchim like that anymore. Anyway, so but that's but I'll call upon him. Getting back to it. So Chanukah are be'etzem yemei halo. Now let's double down on this point. With the exception of Leil HaSeder, obviously. Leil HaSeder, and that's the famous going, Manishtana Laila Hazeh, should be a Laila Azu, that, because Laila is generally Lashon Nekeva, passive, it's not the time when you have mitzvahs aseh. It's time to go to sleep. So, of course, you have to make sure not to be over on mitzvahs lois aseh at night, but mitzvahs aseh, and rov mitzvahs aseh, if they are time related, they're by day, not by night. Right? So it's Manishtana Laila Hazeh. It's like daytime. It's not Laila Lashon Nekeva. It's like Hazeh, Lashon Zachar, Yom, Yamim, right? Yamim Tovim, right? Lashon Zachar, right? And that's the time of Kum Va'aseh, right? All right, so of course, with the exception of Leil HaSeder, of course, so Ikar mitzvah of a day, of a Yom will always be by day. All right, unless it's timeless, like Sukkah, it's Bayom u Balayla. But if Shutaf could be Balayla, not Bayom, and if it's Balayla u Bayom, and you have to choose one, the Yom is Ikar. Like take for example, Kriyas and Megillah. Tosfos deals with this, and Tosfos Pasal Shah. If you can only hear Megillah once, which do you choose? Right, the nighttime or the daytime? You have one. You're really supposed to hear both, right? Right. So it says, the day is Iker. If you're going to hear one, hear the Megillah by day. That's Iker, and that's also halacha. Sudas Shabbos is chovu. We have 3 sudas. You have something really good to eat, geschmack. We eat it by the night meal, by the day meal. The day is almost always the Iker of the Yom, like the Lashon Yom. The Laila is nispach layom. It's but the Iker of the Yom is the Yom, right? The Ikar of the Yom is the Yom, so Leil HaSeder is the big exception. And it's only because of the Gzera Shava, Tesva from Leil HaSeder, Chag HaSukkos, they have this special din of Kazayas, Pas Chova on the first night. Okay, But B'derech Klal, the Ikar of the Yom is the Yom. Okay, so Ner Chanukah is a mitzvah at night. And that's why he says that. He starts off, Yemei Simcha V'Halo. These are days of Simcha V'Halo. And also you light the neros on every night. That's good for Persumei Nisa, which probably also has an element of Persumei Nisa, the Gemara says, right? But so it sounds like that the days b'mahus, as it goes, Yomim Elu Nikreim Chanukah, right? The Yomim Elu, which are Yemei Simcha V'Halo, called Chanukah. Chanukah's Be'ikar Yemei Simcha V'Halo. And there's a din, another mitzvah, d'Rabbanan, of lighting the Ner Chanukah at night. Right? So Masha, the Chanukah's b'mahus, right? The Ikar mitzvahs hayom daika, yom daika, and it's literal, because mitzvahs Ner Chanukah is at night, right? So mitzvahs hayom is hallow, and these are yemei hallow v'simcha. So Yemela, for the special care, and you understand, it's Yemei, they made it days of Hallow because it's not a Yom Tif. It's not a Hallow in response. And it is talking, after the Gula. So you say, there's Takanas Vim that you say Hallow Kisha Nigola Mamusal Gulasim, Psachim Davkov Yedzayin. Yeah, but that was at the time. So it's Ken Zayin, the original, and there's some Rishon that says black and white, and I think this is what the Rambam means to say also. Right, I think, Chacham Shabal Sidor Tiknu, the fact, first, 2 things, okay, is Ken Zayin that even after the first day, and that's Lashon Gemara, L'shana Acheres, Kavum, Shmona Yom B'Halo, right, the next year. It's Ken Zayin that the whole Takonos HaNeviim was just for the very first year immediately after the Gula. A. B, okay, more importantly, even if you say it's forever, it's only one time Hallow on the Nes. Let's say, Bonagid, right? That Takanos Nevi'im is for every year after that Nes on the day, you will say Hallow if you had this Nes happen to you. Well, it's not the Nes happens to the Yochid. The Gemara in Erechid says that so you have to, it has to be a Nes happens to Klal Yisrael. to have a din hollow. It has to be a nes happened the whole klal Yisrael. Okay, right? If you want to say it's b'chol dor v'dor, but it's b'chol dor v'dor on the anniversary of the nes. Here's 8 days of hollow. 8 days. You shmona yomim elu. 8 days, right? Takanos V'im was just al gulasan. It would be the first day. So if you want a taina, right, that the pshat in the Takanos V'im that's brought down on Psachim Daf Kuf Yud Zayin is b'chol shana v'shana u'masal gulasan. That'll be just on Chafei, the day that that the war was over, presumably. Right? That's when they reconquered the Heichal, right? Chanukah. That should be Shmonas Yomim. That's Avada. That is Avada, a takana that came from the Chacham Sheba also Dor, Lashon Rambam. Then Chacham Sheba also Ador, not the Nevi'im. Chacham Sheba lived much earlier, but Chacham Sheba also Dor made it 8 days. No reason why the Takanos Nevi'im, if you want to say it is on the anniversary of the Gula B'chol Dor V'Dor, will just be on the day. But that should be 8 days. That's Avada, a Durabanan Dika invention. Right? The nes was on Chafei. The nes was on Chafei, right? That they had the Geula from the Tzara, because they recapped it. Okay. But now you're saying hollow for 8. All right. So that's a Drabonatic invention. And it's not a Chag. It's not a Moed. It's Mutter B'Mulacha. So it's Yemei Hollow. It's days of hollow. Be'etzem, days of hollow. Right? These are days of Hallel. And, so the days, b'mahutam, are days of Hallel. And that's why, and that's because of the special relationship between Chanukah and Hallel. That's why Rambam thought, okay, since Chanukah is be'etzem yemei Hallel, not that you say Hallel because it's a Yom Tov, or you'll say Hallel because you're taking lulav, like we want it. But it's yemei Hallel, right? That's why the best place to put it is in Hilchos Chanukah, right? But the amazing thing is that, it sounds like from the Rambam, the Hallel is closer to the mahus of what makes Chanukah special than the din of Hadlakas Ner Chanukah, which is also a din in Hallel. Right? Actually, also a mitzvah of Hallel. It's also din in Hallel since it's Pirsumei Nisa, but it's, that's what I meant to say. It's also a extension of Hallel because it's the Harosu Gal Sanes. Matter of fact, it's the Lashon Rambam at the end of Hilchos Chanukah, right? If you take a look, Ayin Sham, right? That mitzvah is there. That's a losif bekel b'shevach hakel baruch hu, of why Ner Chanukah is such a chaviv mitzvah, because it's meisif b'shevach hakadosh baruch hu. Ner Chanukah is a seif of Hallel. So the mahus is Hallel. Ner Chanukah, as is muchach from the end of Hilchos Chanukah. I don't have it in front of me right now. Take a look. Maush, the end of Hilchos Chanukah is because Losif b'shevach hakel baruch hu, right? Ner Chanukah is also Hallel, but since it's in its own zman and it's its own ma'aser, it gets its own bracha. And I think this will help us with something that we're going to do very, very shortly, right? Right. But I think this is the pshat. This is the pshat, that Chanukah is betzem yemei Hallel. So, let's be misakem all the points that we made. All right. So, first of all, Hallel, is not Hodah. They're not synonyms. So, since it's not Hodah, you can't consider that Kilo it has a yesod. In Hodah may have a yesod in the Torah, mitzad tefillah, right? Mitzad berchos hamazon. Right, and Hodah, Hilchos Hodah, like Birkas HaGomel, is Taka in Sefer Ava. Right, Hallel is a Bria B'fnat, so it's pure Shevach of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, purely a Durabanan Dika invention. Right, purely a Durabanan Dika. That's why it's not in Sefer Ava. Right, it's not a Din Tefillah at all. Right, so now you ask, why is it Dafka in Hilchos Chanukah and not where it's mentioned earlier? Because we want to say that there's reactive Hallel, that it comes, because triggered by the fact there's Kedushas Moed, or triggered by Leila Seder, or triggered by Netilas Lulav is also another possibility we said. That's Hallel that's triggered. Right? But then there's Hallel that these are Be'etzem Yemei Hallel. Be'etzem Yemei Hallel, that's the Mahus of Chanukah, especially the fact that Chanukah is 8 days long. That's for sure is a D'Rabbanan Dika invention that you cannot say is kalul in the original Takanas Hanavim that were just set up the idea of halo, right? And so you say, if you want to say the Nevi'im, that you say it on your gula. If you want to time it's b'chol dor v'dor on the anniversary, it'll just be on the anniversary. Why 8 days? That's for sure. That the 8 days of Chanukah are Yemei Halo, days of Halo, because it's not a Yom Tif, it's not coming in response. In fact, there's Kedushas Moed, right? It's Yemei Halo, days of Halo, which seems to be kashur to Chanukah b'mahuto, and Ner Chanukah would be an extension of that. That if you want to say, so we say Pesach Chag HaMatzos, or Hilchos Megillah could also be the name for all Hilchos Purim, because there's certain mitzvahs that help define the mahus of the Chag, that sets it apart from other Chagim. Chanukah, the most of Chag is Halo, and Ner Chanukah is a seif of that. Not what most people might have thought, that like Ner Chanukah would touch up the mahus of the Chag, and Halo is secondary. No, that's Halo by the other Chagim. It's b'mahus Chag HaMatzos, and it's a moed, and in response to that comes the Halo. By Chanukah, it's be'etzem Yemei Halo, and that's why the Rambam decided that the most appropriate place for Hilchos Halo is in Hilchos Chanukah, Kain Nira Nevar, and I think we'll be able to tighten this very nicely with the other Rambams that we'll be doing shortly. Ad kan lahayom. Stick with this. This is how you learn a Rambam.